Welcome everyone to Rules Explained. In this episode, we're going over X-Wing by Fantasy Flight Games. I am John Merritt.
I'm Rob Nothing.
Let's get started. We've gone over the turn, and that went pretty quick. We're going to move into additional rules in this episode. So this is the real meat and potatoes of the game. I mean, the actual turn itself goes pretty quickly, but the additional rules is where it really gets interesting. So in the action phase, after you move, you get to perform one action. And as it says in bold here, a ship cannot perform the same action more than once per round. Well, that seemed kind of counterintuitive, in which they say you can only do one action, but then they say you can't do more than once per round. So I wonder if there's some stuff in there that allows you to perform multiple actions.
Probably special cards, a force user or something. They just want to make sure that you're not getting somebody who's doing like 4 or 5 barrel rolls right in a row.
Or perform like 2 action locks. Oh, yeah, that kind of
Right.
makes sense. Some actions are red. So if you perform this action, like for example, this barrel roll, which is red, you then gain a stress token, which, as we learned earlier, means you can't perform any more actions. You can't, you can't perform any more actions until you perform, was it a blue or green maneuver?
I think in this game it's blue.
Is it blue? A blue maneuver, which then takes away a stress token. This is new, the linked actions. That says if you perform one action, you then have the ability to do another action. They're linked. So like in this barrel roll action, if your action is to do a focus, you can then do a barrel roll if you want to. Now the barrel roll is red, which means after you do the barrel roll, you will then gain a stress token. But this is new, linked actions.
And this is where that other rule comes into play. I can't do 2 barrel rolls in the same time. I have to have, the linked action has to be a different action than the barrel roll.
Good point. Now the types of actions, the 3 major we are going to look at is the focus, the evade, and the barrel roll. Well, and boost. Okay, the 4 actions we're going to look at is the focus, the evade, the barrel roll, and the boost.
You shall not count to 4.
Yeah. The focus is probably, I think, one of the more common ones. So you perform your move, you then perform a focus. You put down a focus token. What this allows you to do is when you roll the dice, when a ship performs a focus action, it's the eyeball, it gains a focus token, which is then placed next to the ship. While attacking, a ship can spend a focus token during the attack phase to change all of its eyeball results to a hit. So you roll the dice. If any eyeballs come up, you change those to a hit. While defending, a ship can spend a focus token during the defense dice step to change any eyeballs to an evade. So you put down, your focus token. You don't have to spend it during your attack or during your defense, which, tactically it says, you might want to spend it, but you're not sure which yet.
And this is where the initiative comes into play. The focus token is the most flexible out of all the actions you can do, but it's also the one that's least guaranteed because you have to roll eyeballs on your dice in order to go ahead and use the focus action. But if you think about your initiative order, if I have a low initiative order and I have a focus token, I have that chance, do I spend it now on my chance to hit? Or do I wait when I'm being shot at later? So this becomes very important. And then if I have a high initiative value, I've already seen everybody's actions. I've already seen what they have done. So now I have the better tactical advantage to the use of my focus action.
And for additional rules, you can also evade. So instead of using a focus, you can put an evade, which, as Rob was saying, guarantees you an evade token. So evade represents a pilot flying erratically or unpredictability to make it harder for enemy ships to hit them. When a ship performs an evade action, it gains an evade token, which is placed next to that ship. While defending, a ship can spend that evade token during the defense die to change one of its blank or eyeball results to an evade result. So this guarantees you a result. This is not an additional evade, but this is replacing one of your dice rolls to guarantee you at the very least one evade token.
Yes, it's for those who want to make sure that they have that chance to avoid damage.
One of the other actions you can do, so for the example they gave, you can do a barrel roll. which is essentially a 1-inch token template to the right or left. And they give you an example of how to do it. Let me see if I can do this. Let me switch over and I can do an example of this.
The barrel roll might be called a shift in some other games, like for example, Dungeons and Dragons 4th or 5th edition use the concept of the shift. It might be called a slide maneuver if you're doing some sort of like Car Wars or any other type of game, which talks about the ability to drift from one side to the other, from your left or to your right.
So for movement, you can see I have my TIE fighter here, and I put a 1-inch marker to the right. Oops, let me unlock this guy first. You then pick him up, move him over, drop him down, take away your barrel roll, and that's how you perform a barrel roll action.
This has the advantage, of course, of either A, getting you out of somebody's firing arc, or B, putting somebody into your firing arc.
Yep. You can boost. Now again, these have to be listed on the actions for that particular ship. If it's not listed, you can't do them. I've seen the A-Wing have the boost, a lot like the barrel rolls to the left or to the right. A boost allows you to go forward, or bearing to the right, or bearing to the left. So you can choose either the forward template or the bear left or bear right template, and it moves exactly the same. And like Rob was saying, this could either put you in a firing arc or out of a firing arc.
Or close range, or
True.
get out of range.
True, good point. I mean, you might, it might take you from a range 2 to a range 1, or a 3 to a 2 or something. The lock ability. This is a fantastic ability. X-Wings have this, and it works great. Lock represents the ability of a ship's computer to obtain a target lock. So you hear it all the time in the movies. You can do it here by tracking the target's movements and associating the attack against it. When a ship performs a lock action, follow these steps. This is really important because this is always for grave debate. Measure the range from the locking ship to any number of ships. Choose a ship at range 0 to 3. So in our previous rules, we said you can't shoot at a ship at range 0, which is when the two bases are actually touching. You can lock onto it though. You then associate a lock token to that ship with the lock's number matching the ID token of the ship's locking ship. So the locking icons have numbers on them. It's usually one green, one red. The green one goes on the ship, the red one goes on the defending ship, and they have numbers on them because there might be multiple locks going on at the same time. This keeps it kind of organized. Organized so you know who's shooting at what and who has locks on what, because there could be locks all over the place. A ship is
target lock. The target lock is, like you said, a great way to simulate what is a very common factor in air-to-air combat in the modern sense, with target locks being used to go ahead and assure the chance to hit with various weapon systems. And also, for those of you who might be wondering, certain weapons, certain systems, and certain actions require you to have locks. So if you have that lock, you'd be able to go ahead and say, fire a torpedo or whatever the case may be. So there are all sorts of other functions that can go ahead and be associated with the target lock.
Now the other thing for a great debate is, does it have to be in the firing arc, or is it a 360? I haven't read anything that said you can only do a target lock of people in your forward fire arc.
That is correct. You can be in any arc because the sensors, if you want to put this in the narrative sense, the ship's sensors and the ship's computer are scanning at a 360 degree, or I guess 360, 720. We got to think three-dimensionally.
Sphere.
Yeah, there you go. In some sort of vast sphere. So there, in all likelihood, you can go ahead and make a target lock. You may not be able to fire at that ship yet, but the computer is now watching that particular item. And when you go ahead and get the chance to fire at it in your firing arc, that's fine. But you always will be able to sense that ship, always be able to know where that ship is with your computer and your sensors.
So in the example here, it says, while the X-Wing performs a lock action, it measures range to all ships. then chooses a ship to lock onto. The player chooses the only TIE fighter in range and associates the one lock since the X-Wing has the one ID token. Oh, I see what they've done. That's actually really cool. So you put the ID on the actual ship. So if you had multiple X-Wings and you put the 1, 2, and 3 ID marker on them, the ID marker of the actual lock itself should match that ship. That way ID ship 3 has ID ship lock on the actual TIE fighter. That's one. Oh wow, I never really occurred to me to do it that way before. I've always just picked matching ones and threw them down. But to actually associate them with the ID of the ship itself is brilliant. All right, card actions. Some cards, such as damage and upgrade cards, have abilities that include the action header. A ship may resolve one of these abilities as an action. So in this example, actions spend 1 energy charge to repair 1. The Bullseye Arc. This is new to 2nd edition as well.
Let's jump back to the card action real quick. So if those are all the actions that you can perform, is that correct, John?
Oh, no. There are many more actions you're able to perform because some ships may have unique actions associated with that particular ship. These are just kind of the more generic ones that are associated to the cards that are in the core box set.
And it's important to note that no matter how many actions are available to you, you can only perform one of them unless you have some sort of special ability. And this is what's common amongst games nowadays to clarify the rules as well as to avoid arguments. Is they always say, look, specific always overrules general. So the general rule is you only get one action. But if you have a specific card that says in addition or add an action or you can do this action even if you performed an action, that will override that. So it just makes it a lot easier when you know that this general rule applies unless I have specifically a card or specifically something that says I can do another action.
Absolutely. The Bullseye Arc. This is new to 2nd edition. All ship tokens have a Bullseye Arc printed inside their forwarding arc display. The narrow arc has no inherent effect, but some card abilities refer to it. So in this, so to measure it, this is an additional range. Yeah, this is an additional range. So we said in the rules, it goes from base to base. So it's wherever the closest base overlaps is where that range is. So in this example, the forward arc is a range of 1 because that's where it first touches the base. The bullseye marker has a range 2 because that's where it first touches the base. So it's independent of the forwarding arc range.
And for those of you who are trying to figure out what this is all about, well, you can bullseye womp rats all you want, Luke, but the whole point here is that this represents a very focused attack. You might want to think about this from the old days of dog fighting, when you got the person directly in your sights. You don't have to maneuver your craft. So depending on the card, depending on the action, depending on the starfighter, you might have bonus dice to attack. You might be able to re-roll dice, or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
This is a way to go ahead and increase your chances of success with an attack of some sort.
Range bonuses. This is important. A range accuracy can be dramatically affected by the range as much. It is much easier to shoot a nearby enemy than a distant one. So when a ship is at range 1, you gain an additional attack die. When a ship is at range 3, they receive an additional defense die. At range 2, it's neither. So if you're at range 1, you get an additional attack die. If you're at range 3, you get an additional defense die. That's all you really have to remember, and this is where the tactics come into play. Destroying a ship. When the hull value, the yellow, gets down to 0, it explodes. It's pretty much that simple. The timing, if a ship is destroyed outside of engagement phase, is removed immediately. If a ship is destroyed during the engagement phase, it is removed after all ships had the same initiative as the current engagement ships have engaged. This is called simultaneous fire. So which represent, so even if it blows up, if they have the same initiative phase and you decide the other player goes first and it destroys that ship, you still get to fire. It gets removed from play after your initiative phase. I guess that's an important bullet point. Fleeing the area. After a ship executes a maneuver, if any part of the ship's base is outside the play area, the ship flees.
This is a rule that I completely understand why it exists, but I also completely disagree with in its intent. Obviously, if you're playing a tournament, you want to go ahead and have some very concrete rules as far as where a ship may go. But if you're playing a game with your friends, you might want to go ahead and just allow for some small minor errors of calculation, because to assume that my ship flees the area just because 1/8 of an inch of my base is now off the playing surface doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I think the rule is designed to go ahead and avoid the arguments. I completely get it. John and I were discussing that in our games, the house rule would be is if you are off the edge of the table, if your miniature can still stand there, it's fine. But if it falls off the table, then it does flee. That would represent a gross error of navigation on your part. But if if it can still stand on the table without falling off, well, congratulations, you just barely made it on the playing surface.
Yeah, I mean, it's a friendly game. I see this rule being primarily for a tournament. I mean, you need absolute rules for tournament play. If not, then it gets subjective. And the golden rule is have a good time. Adjust the rules. As Rob likes to call them, house rules. And I agree. I think if a ship was partially off, by a couple millimeters, it's not that big of a deal. If the whole ship is completely off the board, then it's gone. I think that keeps in line with the spirit of, keep your guys on the board. Repairing damage cards in an effect. Instruments instructs a player to repair a damage card. They can repair either a face-up or face-down. Oh, this is an action. Okay, this is important, actually. If you get a critical damage card, it'll sometimes give you an action of repairing it. So in lieu of performing an action, your action would be to repair your ship, in which then the card goes from face-up to face-down. So it's still recorded as a hit, but it's considered repaired. So your critical card, maybe you can only, your movement is lessened by 1. I don't know. Or your range only has a maximum range of 2 instead of 3. Well, you repair the card, it flips over, still counted as damage, but it is now fixed.
And in theory, you could also go ahead and repair that damage card if you had that option and get rid of it completely.
Yes.
Once it's flipped over, it has to be, there's 2 stages. If you got a critical hit and you wanted to get rid of it, there's 2 stages. 1, flip it over to regular damage. 2, then you can eliminate the damage point.
Yep. So that's actions. Guys, if we missed anything, please feel free to email us at rulesexplained@gmail.com. We'd like to thank Ethan Peoples again for the music. He does a fantastic job. He just got a couple burner instruments, so he might be re-recording some stuff for us. You can always find us on Spotify, iTunes. We're also on YouTube. Go to email. Go to YouTube at Rules Explained. You'll find us. Again, if you have any questions, comments, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at rulesexplained@gmail.com. I am John Merritt.
I'm Rob Nothing.
Guys, have a fantastic day.
Adios.